The church bells of St. Augustine Cathedral rang out across the French Quarter, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As she adjusted her wedding dress one final time, a distant scream echoed from the bayou beyond the city limits. Her grandmother's cryptic warning from the night before haunted her thoughts. Some traditions in Louisiana run deeper than love, child, deeper than life itself. What Sarah did not know was that her wedding day would become the last day of normalcy for everyone she loved. Because in the murky waters of the Louisiana Bayou, something ancient and hungry had awakened, and it was coming for the celebration. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment with your favorite horror topic. Your suggestions fuel our darkest tales. The morning sun cast golden rays through the ancient oak trees surrounding St. Augustine Cathedral, their Spanish moss swaying like ghostly curtains in the humid New Orleans air. Sarah Boudreau stood before the ornate mirror in the cathedral's bridal suite, her hands trembling as she fastened the pearl necklace that had belonged to 5 generations of Boudreau women. "You look radiant, ma chère," whispered her Aunt Celeste, adjusting the delicate lace sleeves of Sarah's vintage gown. But even as she smiled, Celeste's eyes held a shadow of concern that she couldn't quite hide. Outside, guests were already gathering in the cathedral's courtyard, their laughter mixing with the distant sounds of jazz music drifting from the French Quarter. Marcus, her groom, would be getting ready just a few blocks away at the historic Hotel Monteleone. They had planned this wedding for 2 years, choosing New Orleans not just for its romantic charm, but because it was where Sarah's family had deep roots that ran deeper than she ever imagined. Sarah's fingers traced the intricate beadwork on her dress as she thought about her grandmother's strange visit the night before. Grandmère Evangeline had appeared at her hotel room door near midnight, her usually bright eyes clouded with worry. "Sarah, child," she had whispered, gripping her granddaughter's hands with surprising strength. "There are things about our family, about this place, that you need to know, but perhaps not tonight, perhaps it's already too late." Before Sarah could ask what she meant, the old woman had pressed a small cloth pouch into her palm. Inside was a mixture of herbs and what looked like bone dust tied with red string. "Keep this with you tomorrow. Promise me, Sarah. No matter what happens, keep it close." Now, as Sarah tucked the mysterious pouch into the hidden pocket of her wedding dress, she tried to push away the unease that had settled in her chest, like a cold stone. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Marcus loved her. Their families had finally come together, and they were starting their new life in the most magical city in America. But as she looked out the window toward the bayou in the distance, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting. The ceremony began at precisely 2 o'clock as tradition demanded. The cathedral's interior was breathtaking, with hundreds of white roses and magnolia blossoms adorning every surface. Candlelight flickered against the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the assembled guests. Sarah walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her heart swelling with joy as she saw Marcus waiting at the altar. He looked handsome in his charcoal gray suit, his eyes shining with tears of happiness. Their families filled the pews, Marcus's relatives from Chicago mixing with Sarah's extended Louisiana clan, creating a beautiful tapestry of love and unity. But as Father Thibodeau began the opening prayers, Sarah noticed something strange. Several of her elderly relatives were fidgeting nervously, their eyes darting toward the windows that faced the bayou. Her great-uncle Boudreau kept muttering under his breath in the old Creole dialect, words she couldn't quite make out, but that sounded like warnings. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, with heartfelt vows that brought tears to many eyes. When Marcus slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger, she felt a moment of pure, crystalline happiness. This was what she had dreamed of since childhood, a love story worthy of the romantic city that had raised her. "By the power vested in me," Father Thibodeau intoned, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." As their lips met, the cathedral bells began to ring, their joyous sound echoing across the French Quarter. The guests erupted in cheers and applause, rice flying through the air as the newlyweds made their way back down the aisle. But Sarah's moment of triumph was interrupted by a sound that made her blood run cold. From somewhere beyond the cathedral walls came a low, mournful howl. Not quite human, not quite animal. It rose and fell like a funeral dirge, seeming to answer the wedding bells with its own dark song. Most of the guests didn't seem to notice, caught up in their celebration. But Sarah saw her grandmother in the back pew, her face pale as death, her lips moving in what looked like a desperate prayer. The reception was held at the historic Beauregard House, a stunning antebellum mansion just outside the French Quarter. The estate's gardens were transformed into a fairy tale setting, with strings of lights woven through the ancient live oaks and tables adorned with elegant centerpieces of white orchids and Spanish moss. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the celebration was in full swing. The jazz band played softly while guests enjoyed cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, their conversations flowing as smoothly as the champagne. Sarah and Marcus moved through the crowd like floating on air, accepting congratulations and basking in the warm glow of their loved one's joy. But as darkness began to fall over the bayou, the atmosphere started to shift in subtle ways. The cicadas and tree frogs that usually provided the soundtrack to Louisiana evenings had gone eerily silent. A thick mist was rising from the swamplands, creeping across the mansion's manicured grounds like ghostly fingers. Sarah's cousin Marie pulled her aside during the dinner service, her face etched with concern. "Sarah, honey, some of the older folks are getting nervous," Marie whispered. "They're saying this mist ain't natural. And did you hear about what happened at the Trem cemetery this morning? 3 graves were found disturbed, like something had clawed its way out from the inside." Before Sarah could respond, the lights throughout the garden began to flicker. The jazz band faltered, their music dying away as an oppressive silence settled over the celebration. Guests looked around nervously, some reaching for their phones to check for storm warnings. Marcus appeared at Sarah's side, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. "Maybe we should move the party inside," he suggested quietly. "This mist is getting pretty thick." But it was too late. From the edge of the property, where the manicured gardens gave way to wild bayou, came the sound of splashing water and breaking branches. Something was moving through the marsh, something large and determined. And as the mist swirled thicker around them, Sarah caught a glimpse of shapes emerging from the darkness, shapes that moved with an unnatural, lurching gait that made her heart race with primal terror. The first scream shattered the evening air like breaking glass. Sarah spun toward the sound, her wedding dress rustling against the damp grass as panic seized her chest. Near the garden's edge, Mrs. Arsenault, her elderly neighbor who had taught her to make proper gumbo, was backing away from something in the mist, her hands pressed to her mouth in horror. What emerged from the bayou fog was a nightmare beyond imagination. The thing that had once been human lurched forward on rotting legs, its wedding attire from decades past hanging in moldy tatters. Spanish moss clung to its decomposing flesh, and its eyes glowed with an unholy hunger that made Sarah's soul recoil. "Mon Dieu," whispered Grandmère Evangeline, appearing suddenly at Sarah's side. "The curse has awakened. After all these years, it has finally come to collect." More shapes materialized from the mist, a horrifying procession of the long dead, their decayed faces twisted with an insatiable need. They moved with purpose, surrounding the reception like predators circling prey. Women in rotted burial dresses, men in suits that had moldered in coffins for generations, children whose small forms were barely held together by the dark magic that animated them. The guest celebration transformed into chaos. Screams replaced laughter as people scattered in all directions, their formal attire torn and muddied as they fled. Tables overturned, sending crystal and china crashing to the ground. The jazz band abandoned their instruments, the trumpet player's last note hanging in the air like a death knell. Marcus grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her toward the mansion. "We need to get inside now." But Grandmère Evangeline caught Sarah's other arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "No, child. Inside won't save you. This is about our bloodline, about a debt that's been waiting to be paid. Your wedding day was never random. It was chosen." Sarah's blood turned to ice as understanding dawned. "What are you saying? The Boudreau women have been blessed with love and cursed with loss for over 2 centuries. Every generation the bayou claims its due. Tonight, It comes for you. The zombies moved with terrifying coordination, herding the panicking guests toward the mansion like sheep toward slaughter. Sarah watched in horror as her college roommate Jennifer was cornered by 3 of the undead creatures near the fountain, her bridesmaid dress torn as she fought desperately to escape their grasping, decomposing hands. "We have to help her!" Sarah broke free from Marcus's grip, but her grandmother's weathered fingers dug deeper into her arm. "You cannot save them all, ma petite. The curse demands a choice. One soul freely given to break the chain, or it will take everyone you hold dear." Around them, the nightmare unfolded with devastating speed. Uncle Boudreau fought valiantly with a broken table leg, trying to protect a group of children who huddled behind an overturned buffet table. But even his courage couldn't hold back the relentless advance of the walking dead. Marcus pulled out his phone, desperately dialing 911, but there was no signal. The supernatural fog seemed to block all communication with the outside world, trapping them in this pocket of hell. "Sarah, what is your grandmother talking about?" Marcus demanded, his eyes wild with fear and confusion. "What curse? What choice?" Before Grand-mère could answer, a figure stepped out of the mist that made Sarah's heart stop. It was a woman in a wedding dress identical to her own, but aged and stained with centuries of decay. Her face, though partially decomposed, bore an unmistakable resemblance to Sarah's own features. "Hello, descendant," the creature spoke, its voice like wind through tombstones. "I am Celeste Boudreau, your great-great-great-grandmother. I made the same choice you faced tonight back in 1847. I chose love over duty, marriage over sacrifice. And so the curse passed to the next generation, and the next, until it reaches you." The zombie bride's hollow eyes fixed on Sarah with ancient sadness. "But tonight, the Bayou grows tired of waiting. Tonight, either you join us willingly, or everyone at this celebration becomes part of our eternal dance." Sarah felt the world spinning around her as the full horror of her heritage became clear. The circle of undead tightened around the remaining survivors, who had managed to cluster together near the mansion's front steps. Sarah counted maybe 20 people left alive from the 100 who had celebrated just an hour ago. The rest had either fled into the night or been claimed by the ravenous horde. Marcus stood protectively in front of Sarah, a broken champagne bottle in his hand, ready to fight until his last breath. Her father and several other men formed a defensive line, armed with whatever makeshift weapons they could find. But they all knew it was hopeless. The zombies felt no pain, showed no fatigue, and their numbers seemed endless. "Choose now, child," the ancient bride commanded, extending one skeletal hand toward Sarah. "Come willingly and your loved ones will be spared. Refuse, and watch them all join our ranks." Sarah looked at Marcus, at her parents, at the terrified faces of everyone she loved. The herb pouch her grandmother had given her seemed to burn against her chest, and suddenly she understood its purpose. It wasn't protection, it was preparation. "There has to be another way," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Grand-mère Evangeline stepped forward, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "There is, ma chère, but it requires the ultimate sacrifice from one who loves you more than life itself." She looked directly at Marcus, and Sarah saw understanding dawn in his eyes. "No," Sarah breathed. "No, I won't let you." But Marcus was already moving, pushing past her toward the ancient bride. "I offer myself in her place," he declared, his voice steady despite his terror. "Take me instead. Let Sarah and everyone else go free." The zombie bride tilted her rotted head, considering. "Love given freely has power, mortal man. But are you certain? Once you join us, there is no return." Marcus looked back at Sarah one last time, his eyes shining with tears and infinite love. "For her, I'm certain." As he reached out to take the creature's hand, Sarah's scream of anguish echoed across the bayou, drowning out even the moans of the hungry dead. As Marcus's fingers touched the ancient bride's decayed hand, a brilliant white light erupted from the herb pouch against Sarah's chest. The sacred mixture, blessed by 7 generations of Boudreau women who had faced this same terrible choice. blazed with power that even the undead couldn't withstand. The zombie horde recoiled, their moans turning to shrieks of pain as the light consumed them. One by one, they crumbled to dust, finally finding the peace that had been denied them for centuries. The ancient bride looked at Sarah with something that might have been gratitude before she too dissolved into the Louisiana night. But victory came at a cost that would haunt Sarah forever. Marcus collapsed to his knees, the supernatural energy having drained something essential from him. Though alive, he would never be quite the same, forever marked by his sacrifice, carrying a piece of the bayou's darkness within him. As dawn broke over New Orleans, Sarah knelt beside her husband in her torn and muddied wedding dress, holding him close as the mist finally cleared. The curse was broken, but love had been forever changed. Some traditions in Louisiana truly do run deeper than life itself. The survivors would carry this night with them always, a reminder that in a city built on mystery and magic, some prices are paid in ways we never expect. And in the French Quarter, when the mist rises from the bayou and the church bells ring at midnight, locals still whisper about the wedding where love conquered death, but only barely. Love, sacrifice, and the supernatural collide in the most haunting ways. What would you do if faced with Sarah's impossible choice? Would you sacrifice everything for love or let darkness claim those you hold dear? The mysteries of New Orleans run deeper than we ever imagine, and every family has secrets that stretch back through generations. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button and join our community of horror enthusiasts. Drop a comment below and tell us what terrifying topic you'd like us to explore next. Your suggestions fuel our darkest tales. From haunted plantations to voodoo curses, from ghostly encounters to supernatural love stories, we're here to take you on journeys into the unknown. Until next time, remember that in places where history runs deep and magic still lingers, love might be the most dangerous force of all.